Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, Syrian government forces and the US-backed Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces have ordered a ceasefire after deadly clashes erupted in Aleppo, killing at least 3 people. The fighting comes as pressure mounts ahead of a deadline to integrate these Kurdish forces into the Syrian army. We'll bring you all the latest on that on the show.
Also on World DNA, US President Donald Trump has announced plans for a new class of heavily armed warships bearing his name. He touted them as the largest and most lethal surface combat vessels in American history. We'll bring you all the details on that. Let's start with the headlines. This is World DNA.
The largest, sturdiest, and most heavily armed vessel built specifically for naval combat.
Donald Trump announces a new class of heavily armed U.S. warships named after himself, says 2 Trump-class ships will be built initially, describing them as the largest and most lethal surface warships in U.S. history.
President Trump says talks to end the Ukraine war are going okay as US-sponsored negotiations continue amid limited progress. Zelensky urges Washington to maintain pressure to elicit a response from Russia.
I can't tell. That's up to him what he wants to do. I think it would be smart for him to do that.
Donald Trump says it would be wise for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to step down as Washington increases pressure through a naval blockade targeting Venezuela's oil.
Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi and its assistant missions in Tripura and Siliguri have suspended all visa and consular services indefinitely amid rising tensions in Bangladesh-India relations.
Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir positions his country as protector of Muslim world, pledges military support to Libya, evoking religious ties and warning that Muslim countries have been weakened by loss of technological knowledge.
Syrian government forces and Kurdish-led SDF ordered their fighters to a ceasefire after clashes that killed 3 people in Aleppo. Fighting erupted ahead of the deadline to implement agreement to integrate the SDF into the Syrian army.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hails government decision to establish a commission of inquiry into October 7 attack, assuring public that it would not be subject to political influence.
US tech billionaire Larry Ellison personally guarantees $40.4 billion in equity financing as Paramount presses ahead with its bid for Warner Brothers Discovery, strengthening funding certainty and addressing board concerns while the high-stakes media takeover battle intensifies.
Now, the Syrian government and Kurdish-led SDF have ordered their fighters to cease fire following deadly clashes in Aleppo.
At least 3 people were reportedly killed in the clashes, which came ahead of a deadline to integrate the SDF into the Syrian army. The Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, they control vast swathes of Syria's oil-rich northeast.
Now, the Syrian Defense Ministry said that the army has issued an order to stop targeting the sources of fire. Our SDF also said it has issued directives to the forces to cease responding to attacks. The two sides had earlier traded blame over who started the clashes.
State news agency Sana said that 2 civilians were killed and 8 others were wounded in SDF shelling on districts of Aleppo. SDF claimed that a woman was killed and 17 civilians wounded on its side by rocket and tank shelling carried out by the government factions on the Sheikh Maqsood and Ashrafiyeh neighborhoods. These neighborhoods have remained under the control of Kurdish units linked to the SDF and the Kurds' domestic security forces, despite a disengagement agreement reached in April with Syria's new authorities.
In October, Syria announced a comprehensive ceasefire with Kurdish forces following deadly clashes in the districts. Under the March deal between Damascus and the SDF, the Kurds' civil and military institutions should be integrated into the central government by year-end, but differences have held up the deal's implementation despite international pressure.
The clashes coincide with the top Turkish ministers to Syria. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, Defense Minister Yasar Güler and Intelligence Chief Ibrahim Kalin met with Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara. Turkey's top diplomat also urged the Kurds to integrate into the Syrian army, adding that Syria's stability means Turkey's stability.
Of course, we also put the issue related to the SDF on the table. Unfortunately, as my esteemed colleague also stated, we see that they do not intend to make much progress there. Of course, we also discussed the reasons behind this. The fact that the SDF is carrying out certain activities in coordination with Israel has, in reality, become a major obstacle to the talks currently being held with Damascus.
Turkey sees the presence of Kurdish forces on its border with Syria as a security threat. It shares a 900-kilometer border with Syria and has launched successive offensives to push the SDF from its frontier.
US Navy will build a new class of battleships named after Donald Trump.
And these Trump-class ships will become the centerpiece of the president's vision for a new Golden Fleet.
Now, many US ships, they are named after presidents, but the honor is usually reserved for leaders who have left office. Trump claimed that these new battleships will be some of the most lethal surface warfare ships and the largest battleships in the history of the country. US Navy Secretary John Fallon, he confirmed that the first ship in the class will be called USS Defiant. 2 of the Trump-class ships will be built initially, but Trump said that number could grow substantially.
We envision that these 2 ships, we're talking about 10, but we're going to start with 2, and we're going to quickly morph into 10. And ultimately, we think it's going to be anywhere from 20 to 25 of these. But we're starting with the first 2 immediately, and we're going to then be very quickly involved with, I think, we're going to do another 8. And then we're going to ultimately and pretty quickly have a total of about 20 to 25. We'll make that determination. Battleships are the largest, sturdiest, and most heavily armed vessel built specifically for naval combat. While America has built many new warships over the years, they've tended to be smaller and much smaller and not conducive to where we are and where we're going, and peace through strength.
Now, Trump made the announcement at his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida alongside Fallon. Now, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio asked if the planned warships are a counter to Washington's rival Beijing. Trump declined to specify. Instead, he said, it's a counter to everybody, it's not China. We get along great with China. Trump claimed that these ships will weigh between 30,000 to 40,000 tons and will be armed with missiles and guns, as well as weaponry still in development, such as lasers and hypersonic missiles.
He said that they will also be capable of carrying atomic weapons in the form of the nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missile. The Trump-class ships will be substantially larger than existing U.S. destroyers and cruisers, but the projected displacement cited by the president is somewhat smaller than the last American battleships from the Iowa class, which were retired in the 1990s.
And again, it's 100 times more powerful than the previous Iowa class, it's called. Those are the big ones that you'd see on a show. Victory at Sea. I don't know if anyone's seen Victory at Sea, but it was a classic. They'll help maintain American military supremacy, revive the American shipbuilding industry, and inspire fear in America's enemies all over the world. We want respect. We're going to have it. We already have it. We're more respected now than we ever were.
Trump said he would be involved in the design along with the Navy because he is a very aesthetic person. The U.S. president has complained in the past about the appearance of U.S. ships. Trump said the U.S. is building new 3 large aircraft carriers, adding that 15 submarines are under construction or ready to start. And to give us more details on the story, our correspondent Susan Terani has sent us this report from New York.
President Trump, standing alongside Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and others, laid out plans for a new class of American warships, arguing the U.S. must restore naval dominance as great power competition intensifies. Now, the timing is curious. China now operates a larger submarine fleet than the United States, potentially expanding Beijing's reach across the Pacific. While the U.S. Navy still leads in overall capability, China's rapid undersea buildup has raised alarm inside the Pentagon. This speech signals that the Trump administration wants to send a clear deterrence message, not only to Beijing, but to allies watching closely that maritime power, shipbuilding, as well as industrial capacity are back at the center of U.S. strategy. What comes next will be whether or not Congress will fund it and whether America's shipyards can actually deliver as fast as the president wants. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
The partial release of the Epstein files by the U.S. Justice Department has come under heavy criticism.
Several victims of the disgraced financier have joined a chorus of criticism and slammed the Trump administration for the slow release and the heavy redaction of the records.
So far, DOJ has released over 13,000 files, including photos, videos, and investigative documents. But much of the disclosed material is heavily redacted, so it's hardly disclosed. And several released documents with 100 pages or more were entirely blacked out.
U.S. President Donald Trump has also reacted to the release of the first batch of the files. In his first comments since the release happened, Trump said that people who innocently met Epstein in the past risked having their reputation ruined.
I believe they gave over 100,000 pages of documents, and there is tremendous backlash. It's an interesting question because a lot of people are very angry that pictures are being released of other people that really had nothing to do with Epstein, but they're in a picture with him because he was at a party, and you ruin a reputation of somebody.
Further, Trump blamed Democrats for pushing the release as political distraction. Asked if he was surprised by the number of photos of former President Bill Clinton in the initial release, Trump said he hated to see the photos, but that's what most Democrats and a couple of bad Republicans wanted, quote unquote.
I like Bill Clinton. I've always gotten along with Bill Clinton. I've been nice to him. He's been nice to me. We've always gotten along. Respect him. I hate to see photos come out of him, but this is what the Democrats, mostly Democrats, and a couple of bad Republicans are asking for. So,
the Epstein Files Transparency Act mandated the complete release of the Epstein Files by December 19th. But the Department of Justice has released only one batch of the documents so far. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche has said and blamed the delay on their need to redact the identities of over 1,000 victims.
The statute also requires us to protect victims. And so the reason why we are still reviewing documents and still continuing our process is simply that, to protect victims. So the same individuals that are out there complaining about the lack of documents that were produced on Friday are the same individuals who apparently don't want us to protect victims.
Democrats are now considering legal recourse as a way to ramp up pressure on DOJ for allegedly covering up many details in the released files. Senate Minority Leader has called on the Congress upper chamber to sue the Trump administration.
Now, Ukraine faces one of its most testing phases of the war. Russia is intensifying pressure even as Kiev struggles with manpower, money, and mounting battlefield losses.
For the first time, President Zelensky admits that Ukraine cannot afford to maintain its massive army without Western backing. More in this next report. Take a look.
Russia is expanding its offensive, opening a new phase of intense combat. Outgunned and outnumbered, Ukrainian troops are battling an attempted Russian breakthrough in the Sumy region. This marks a renewed Russian advance in the part of the region largely spared from intense ground fighting since Ukraine regained land in a 2022 counteroffensive. For Moscow, it's a mere distraction, a move to create pressure on Kyiv, stretch the struggling Ukrainian troops in the Eastern Front, and force them to surrender land.
I would like for there to be peace, but as they want us to leave it just like that, I think it's pointless. Why? Because we've been here for 4 years now, and it would be stupid to leave it all behind, having lost so many guys. It's pointless. I don't see the point in leaving it all.
The enemy applies lots of forces to cut off our logistics, so it's a war of drones and logistics now.
Russian drones are raining terror in Odessa as it battles a major energy crisis. Kyiv accuses Moscow of seeking to completely destroy maritime logistics. These are the images of a massive blaze engulfing the port city after overnight strikes. Russian strikes on the Black Sea regions have intensified, hitting bridges, ports, and cutting electricity and heating to thousands as temperatures dip. Russia's glide bombs are creating an asymmetric advantage. Long-range glide bombs, known as KAB, are striking deep behind the front lines. Ukraine claims Moscow has launched nearly 1,200 guided aerial bombs in the past week. Zelensky now admits that Ukraine will not be able to afford maintaining an 800,000-strong army after the end of the conflict with Russia. He asserts the need for Western aid to help finance the military as part of post-conflict security guarantees. Kyiv and its European allies argue that Ukraine needs a larger military to deter a presumed Russian threat, and have named a figure of 800,000. For now, Kyiv says its future and its ability to deter future attacks hinges on its European partners willing to help shoulder that burden, both during and beyond this war. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And the UK police declared a major incident after a sinkhole opened up under a canal.
It is draining part of it, and leaving several boats stranded. Drone footage of this site shows narrow boats inside the sinkhole. Now here's a report on that. Take a look. And while the stars have some secrets, scientists have for the first time witnessed a destruction of worlds.
No explosion, no warning, just slow, relentless destruction. 2 worlds destroyed before our eyes and their last moments written in dust and flame. This next story gives you the details.
Deep in the void, where the star burns bright, worlds are being ground to dust. For years, astronomers thought they had found a planet, a sapphire-like world dubbed Fomalhaut b. But as the gaze of the Hubble Space Telescope intensified, the truth became far more chilling. The planet didn't just move, it began to vanish. The Hubble Space Telescope has detected vast clouds of dusty debris surrounding 2 distant stars. Ancient planetary systems, once stable, have been violently disrupted. And the clues are written in dust. Astronomers noticed something wrong almost immediately. These stars were glowing brighter than expected in infrared light. Too bright. That glow, scientists realized, was heat generated by enormous quantities of dust absorbing stellar energy. Dust that should not exist in such abundance unless something catastrophic had happened. Then the picture sharpened. Hubble's instruments revealed thick, uneven disks of debris, not smooth rings, but chaotic structures. Researchers believe these are the remains of planetary smash-ups. Worlds the size of Mars or larger, shattered after gravitational disturbances sent them on fatal paths. When planets collide, they do not explode like fireworks. They grind. They tear. They disintegrate slowly, producing clouds of fine dust that can linger for hundreds of thousands of years. This is not science fiction. This is planetary evolution at its most brutal phase. Our own solar system likely went through similar chaos billions of years ago. Earth itself may have been born from such destruction, formed after a colossal impact that created the moon. Hubble's images are not just scenes of ruin. They are time machines, snapshots of how solar systems live, break apart, and begin again. Out there, worlds are dying, and from their dust, new ones may someday rise. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Alright, it's World DNA, and as of now, we are slipping into a short break.
But of course, don't go anywhere. We have laws lined up on the other side of World DNA. We begin with China that has lodged a protest with Japan over a series of visits to Taiwan by high-ranking officials from Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party. We'll get you all the details on the other side.
Also on the other side, Pakistan's Field Marshal Asim Munir has positioned his country as the protector of the Muslim world during his visit to Libya. We'll bring you the details on that. Stay tuned. This is World DNA. Come right back.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RS's centenary year, Syria at 100.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Syria at 100.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA with Jyotsna. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines.
Donald Trump says U.S. needs to have Greenland not for critical minerals but for national security after he names Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as his special envoy to Greenland, drawing criticism.
Trump says talks to end the Russia-Ukraine war are going okay as US-sponsored negotiations continue amid limited progress. Zelensky urges Washington to maintain pressure to elicit a response from Russia.
I can't tell. That's up to him what he wants to do. I think it would be smart for him to do that.
Donald Trump says it would be wise for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to step down as Washington increases pressure through a naval blockade targeting Venezuela's oil.
Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi and its assistant missions in Tripura and Siliguri have suspended all visa and consular services indefinitely amid rising tensions in the India-Bangladesh relations.
Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir positions his country as protector of Muslim world, pledges military support to Libya, evoking religious ties and warning that Muslim countries have been weakened by loss of technological knowledge.
Syrian government forces and Kurdish-led SDF ordered their fighters to a ceasefire after clashes that killed 3 people in Aleppo. Fighting erupted ahead of the deadline to implement the agreement to integrate the SDF into the Syrian army.
U.S. tech billionaire Larry Ellison personally guarantees $40.4 billion in equity financing as Paramount presses ahead with its bid for Warner Bros. Discovery, strengthening funding certainty and addressing board concerns while the high-stakes media takeover battle intensifies. Now, Bangladesh continues to be on edge amid widespread unrest.
And the country's High Commission has suspended visa services in 3 Indian cities. The move comes days after India temporarily suspended its visa application centers in Chattogram, Bangladesh's second largest city.
Now, at the Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi, a notice has been put up which says that consular and visa services have been temporarily suspended due to unavoidable circumstances.
In India's northeastern state of Tripura, Bangladesh's Assistant High Commission announced the suspension of visa services following a protest outside the mission. A private operator which offers visa services on behalf of Bangladesh in West Bengal, Siliguri, also announced the suspension of visa services.
Meanwhile, tensions continue to simmer on Dhaka's streets. Another student-led Muhammad Mataleb Sigdad was shot at by unknown assailants. Sigdad is a leader of the student-led National Citizen Party. He is currently undergoing treatment at a hospital.
Shortly after the attack, the interim government assigned gunmen to 20 high-risk individuals, including 6 top leaders of the National Citizen Party. Editors of the Daily Star and Pratham Olo, the 2 prominent media outlets which came under a severe attack recently, have also been assigned higher security protection.
And amid the continuing violence, Inqilab Manch has issued a stern warning to the Yunus government. The group has demanded speedy investigation into the murder of its student leader, Sharif Osman Hadi, and a trial before the general election in February next year. It has warned that there will be no elections in the country without the completion of the murder trial.
Now, as uncertainty grips Bangladesh, Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus has assured that the general elections in Bangladesh will be held on time. Yunus held talks with US Special Envoy Sergio Gore and assured him that the elections will take place as scheduled on the 12th of February.
While Yunus says Bangladesh wants to hold a free, fair and peaceful election, the fresh bout of violence and chaos in Dhaka has pushed the country into an uncharted territory, and questions loom over whether Dhaka can hold elections amid this volatile situation.
Pakistan Field Marshal Asim Munir has positioned his country as the protector of the Muslim world.
During a visit to Libya, Munir warned that the world has become increasingly hostile, particularly for Muslim countries.
Now, he highlighted the devastations in recent years by the conflicts and what he called betrayals and conspiracies by foreign powers. Munir said power today does not lie with Muslim countries, as other nations have taken their technological knowledge.
In today's world, there is no rule of law. Actually, it is the law of the jungle which prevails, and the law of the jungle is might is right. And this might, which resides somewhere else today and it's not there with the Muslim world, is essentially because of the possession of the knowledge that they have taken from us.
Now, citing Pakistan's example, he said the country has chosen to develop its own defense capabilities rather than relying on foreign powers. Munir also said that Pakistan is ready to share its experience, technology and assistance with Libya.
Piece of equipment and technology which is there with Pakistan is available for our brothers. In terms of any assistance that you need from Pakistan, that will be available at your doorstep.
Now, Islamabad has signed a deal worth over $4 billion to sell military equipment to the Libyan National Army. And this is despite a UN arms embargo on the North African country. The deal, which is one of Pakistan's largest ever weapons sale, was finalized after a meeting between Munir and Saddam Khalifa Haftar, who is the Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Libyan National Army.
Now, there is a new crackdown which is underway in Pakistan.
The country is trying to stop people from going abroad to beg. Islamabad says that professional beggars are hurting Pakistan's international reputation. This year itself, Pakistan has seen tens of thousands of its citizens deported from other countries because they were found begging. The highest number of deportations were from Saudi Arabia. Riyadh deported 24,000 Pakistani nationals for begging in the kingdom. The UAE deported about 6,000 and Azerbaijan deported about 2,500 Pakistani citizens.
Pakistan's Internal Minister Mohsin Naqvi was at Lahore International Airport on Sunday. He said that professional beggars and people with incomplete documents would not be allowed to go abroad anymore. He added that those who bring a bad name to Pakistan would face strict action. Pakistan's Federal Investigation Agency has already been cracking down. It has offloaded more than 66,000 people from planes at Pakistani airports this year. The FIA says that about 51,000 of them were stopped because they had insufficient or unverified documents. Meanwhile, the agency has faced accusations of arbitrarily offloading people even if they had valid documents.
This year's crackdown comes after Pakistan faced strong criticism from Saudi Arabia in 2024. Riyadh had urged Islamabad to stop people from misusing Umrah visas to get into Saudi Arabia to beg. Umrah visas are issued by Saudi Arabia to Muslim pilgrims traveling to the kingdom outside of the Hajj. China has lodged a protest with Japan over a series of visits to Taiwan by high-ranking Japanese officials.
Now, these officials are from Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, and this comes as tensions continue to simmer between the two countries. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the Japanese moves violated the country's commitments towards a bilateral relationship and has urged Japan to deeply reflect and correct its mistakes.
Japanese lawmakers' visit to China's Taiwan region violates the 4 political documents between China and Japan, Japan's own commitments made to China and the One China principle. China firmly opposes the visit and has protested to the Japanese side. There is but one China in the world, and Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. We once again urge the Japanese side to reflect on and correct its wrongdoings, retract Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's erroneous remarks, and not to interfere in China's internal affairs.
Koichi Hagyuda, an LDP lawmaker and the party's executive acting secretary general, is on a 3-day trip to Taiwan. That will end on Tuesday. According to Taiwanese media, a total of about 30 Japanese lawmakers plan to visit the island between the end of this year and early next year.
Well, Beijing sees Taiwan as part of China to be reunited by force if necessary. The Japanese lawmakers' visit come amid high tensions between Beijing and Tokyo.
This is after a diplomatic row erupted after Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's remarks last month, suggesting a Taiwan contingency could constitute a survival-threatening situation for Japan, justifying the deployment of its military.
Now, China sees Takaichi's comments as interference in its internal affairs and has repeatedly demanded that the Japanese Prime Minister retract her remarks, which she has refused to do so far.
In retaliation, China issued a series of diplomatic rebukes against Japan, along with study and travel advisories, while cancelling several exchange programs. It has also suspended all Japanese seafood imports.
Now, in another development, a senior Japanese official's remarks about possessing nuclear weapons is met with heavy criticism from China. Chinese Foreign Ministry has urged the international community must show resolute opposition to it. Now, Japanese Defense Minister later said that they left open the possibility of Japan reviewing its non-nuclear principles in the future.
If Japan further pushes the envelope and continues to challenge international justice and test the bottom line of the international community, China's response will be a firm no. China and all peace-loving countries in the world are on high alert and firmly opposed to the dangerous tendency Japan has shown on the issue of nuclear weapons, and strongly urge Japan to abide by international law and its constitution and stop the venturing and provocative moves towards owning nuclear weapons. Japan must not seek to challenge the post-war international order and stop plunging further down the wrong path.
Meanwhile, flight cancellations continue to disrupt travel between China and Japan heading into the holiday season amid deepening tensions between the two countries.
And according to reports, flights across 46 routes, including to popular tourism destinations, have now been cancelled over the next 2 weeks. Now, China is rapidly expanding and modernizing its nuclear arsenal.
The latest warning comes from a draft US Pentagon report accessed by Reuters. The revelations in this report raise fresh concerns of a new global nuclear arms race. According to a draft Pentagon report, China has likely loaded more than 100 intercontinental ballistic missiles into newly constructed silo fields, and this marks a significant escalation in Beijing's nuclear capabilities.
Now, the report says the missiles are solid-fueled DF-31 ICBMs and have been deployed in silo fields near China's border with Mongolia. While the Pentagon had previously identified these silo sites, this is the first time it has assessed the number of missiles likely loaded inside them. Now, the findings come as U.S. officials warn that China is expanding its nuclear stockpile faster than any other nuclear-armed state. However, Beijing has rejected such assessments, calling reports of a military buildup in an attempt to smear and defame China in order to mislead the international community. Despite diplomatic push from Washington, the report suggests little room for progress.
Last month, US President Donald Trump said that he may be working on a plan to denuclearize with both China and Russia. But the Pentagon report states clearly that Beijing shows, quote-unquote, no appetite for arms control measures.
Now, China maintains that its nuclear strategy is purely defensive and reiterates a no first-use policy. But the scale and speed of the buildup are raising alarm in Washington and beyond.
All of this is unfolding as the 2010 New START Treaty The last remaining nuclear arms control agreement between US and Russia is set to expire in less than 2 months. The treaty limits deployed strategic warheads and delivery systems, and its expiry could open the door to a three-way nuclear arms race involving China. The Thailand-Cambodia conflict shows no signs of stopping. Dozens have been killed and 500,000, nearly 1 million rather, they have been displaced since fighting resumed on the 8th of December.
Now, the US and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations have been trying hard to get another ceasefire in place, but their efforts seem to be in vain.
Now, earlier, Cambodia said that Thailand unleashed its F-16 fighter jets. Phnom Penh claimed that the Thai forces had bombed several regions of Cambodia, some deep inside its territory, and the accusation came just after Cambodia and Thailand attended peace negotiations.
The members of the ASEAN bloc held a crisis meeting in Malaysia. The foreign ministers of both Thailand and Cambodia were present. The other ASEAN members, led by host Malaysia, were pushing for peace.
The chair urged both parties to undertake full and effective implementation of these agreements and peace accord.
He was asking Thailand and Malaysia to adhere to the peace deal signed on the 26th of October. It is called the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accord. It was brokered by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and US President Donald Trump. But after the meeting, Thailand's foreign minister said this. Listen to this.
I noted that we were sometimes in a rush to do the declaration because, the United States wanted the declaration signed in time by the visit of President Trump. I mean, the earlier the better. But sometimes we really need to sit down, trash things out so that things that we agree will really hold, really be respected.
Now, Thailand's foreign minister implied that the peace deal was not respected because it was rushed. He said that the issue was not properly thrashed out because they wanted to have it ready in time for Trump's visit to Southeast Asia.
Trump keeps insisting that he has ended numerous wars or conflicts since he returned to power, but several of them have failed to hold. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio was questioned about this recently, and he seemed to be on the defensive.
When this fighting, for example, with Thailand and Cambodia did stop, both sides have made commitments in writing that they signed. Those commitments today are not being kept as a result of both sides claim grievances against one another. And so the work now is to bring them back to the table. At least we have something we can push them towards compliance on. But as I said, in many of these cases with peace, you sign a peace deal, there's compliance, something happens, they fall out of compliance, you got to bring them back, you got to try to push. But at least you instead of negotiating something new, you're simply trying to now push people back to compliance with what they already agreed on.
Now, Thailand says that its underlying issues with Cambodia were not thrashed out in the agreement brokered by Trump, but the U.S. wants to push Thailand and Cambodia back into compliance anyway. Will it be possible for the U.S. to pressure Thailand and Cambodia to agree to the rushed deal again? And even if Washington is successful, will the peace really hold, is the question that still remains. Now, St. Petersburg is counting down to the festive season, blending New Year celebrations with the Orthodox Christmas in January.
And from imperial-style decorations to lively markets and ice rinks, Russia's former capital is glowing even more elegantly than Moscow. More in this next report and these next visuals. Take a look. US President Trump signed a defense bill which directed the Secretary of State to create a system to assess the implementation of the nuclear agreement struck in 2008.
Now, that was 2 days after India cleared the Sustainable Harnessing and Advancement of Nuclear Energy for Transforming India, or the Shanti Bill, which allows private participation in the nuclear sector. Now, the government bill also eases liability norms by capping operator liability for a nuclear incident to 3,000 crore rupees.
The US Embassy in India welcomed the Shanti Bill on Monday, stating that the US is willing to work with India in the energy sector. We welcome India's new Shanti Bill, a step towards a stronger energy security partnership and peaceful civil nuclear cooperation. The United States stands ready to undertake joint innovation and R&D in the energy sector. This is what the embassy said.
Trump's law shows the U.S. wants India's nuclear liability aligned with global norms. Every fiscal year, the U.S. signs the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. Now, that is a crucial law which determines the defense budget and spending.
Now, a portion of the U.S. law reads, and I quote here, "The Secretary of State shall establish and maintain within the US-India Strategic Security Dialogue a joint consultative mechanism with the Indian government to assess the implementation of the 2008 Indo-US nuclear deal." The read then adds that the Secretary of State should push to align India's domestic nuclear liability rules with international norms.
Now, the Indian government's landmark nuclear reform has drawn global interest. The bill aims for substantial growth in the sector. However, critics have now emphasized concerns about safety, oversight, and supply chain issues. Questions have also been raised on the capping of the nuclear liability amount in case of a tragic event.
India's opposition, the opposition party in India, the Congress party, said that the new nuclear framework's timing is in line with US defense law. The Congress criticized this new bill, saying that it undermines the supplier accountability debate on a national scale. The opposition dubbed the nuclear bill the Trump Act. They also flagged the US push to dilute nuclear liability law nexus.
Now, Congress's General Secretary and Communications in charge, Jairam Ramesh, said, and I'm quoting, "The act is 3,100 pages long. Page 1912 has a reference to the joint assessment between the US and India on the nuclear liability rules. Now, we know for sure why the Prime Minister bulldozed the Shanti Bill through Parliament." Now, Denmark is close to launching a major carbon capture and storage project.
The Greenland Initiative will bury CO2 under the North Sea using advanced offshore technology. The Greensand project, led by British chemicals giant INEOS, will repurpose empty oil reservoirs off the Danish coast to store carbon dioxide permanently. In its first phase, set to begin within months, the facility is expected to inject around 400,000 tons of CO2 per year, liquefied CO2 sourced mainly from European biomass power plants, and it will be shipped to the Danish port of Esbjerg and from there transported offshore to the Nini platform. The carbon will be injected into porous rocks sealed by impermeable layers that have held oil and gas for millions of years.
We have a facility out here in the North Sea, and this is ending the end of the life. So we've been producing oil and gas for many years, and now it was coming to an end. So we thought, what can we use the facilities for? And we found a really good opportunity for reversing. Instead of taking the oil up, we can actually now inject the CO2 down.
Now, experts say the North Sea is ideal for the carbon capture and storage project due to the decades of geological data from oil and gas operations and numerous depleted reservoirs. The Norwegian Offshore Directorate estimates storage capacity in the Norwegian North Sea at 70 billion tons and 78 billion tons on the British side. In Denmark, projects like Total Energies Bifrost could store 335 million tons of CO2, which is compared with the European Union emissions of 3.2 billion tons last year. Experts warn the carbon capture and storage project is expensive and commercial customers are still limited. Even as Norway and Britain develop additional offshore storage sites, environmental groups caution that while the project can help hard to decarbonize industries, it should not be used to justify continuing fossil fuel extractions.
It's a very compelling narrative that sort of the area that was the source of the problem can now be the source of the solution, but it's not really that we're seeing. It's much, much more fossil fuels and climate emissions that comes out of the North Sea than we will ever be able to put back with CCS.
All right, well, that's all on World DNA for today. But before we go, here's a look at all the climate stories that have been making headlines across the world. Thanks for staying with us. Keep watching Beyond Horisont.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at yowan.com.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion.